So this is Torque, T-O-R-Q-U-E, and this is the prospectus. So we're not listed yet. However, this prospectus was lodged 1.5 hours ago with the ASIC. I've had word of that. That is absolutely correct. I'm limited in some of the things I can say to you, but I do recommend that when this is available in about 7 days to 14 days, then do read it. It's an absolutely thrilling document, especially when you get to the part of the investigating accountants. That'll have you on the edge of your seats, never mind the legal section. But for those more serious, you probably start at the back and find out where all the nefarious people put all their problems, but also the application forms there. So that's Talk. If you would like me to send you a copy of that, soft copy of that, please come along to the booth. We are booth number 17, Talk Metals. Okay, one quick question. Who could tell me what the Australian gold price was this morning, roughly? Within a dollar. Correct, 17.20. I never ask a question unless I know the answer. And it's 17.20. Now, what that means is that we are probably about $90 away from the all-time high for gold. It means that we are running at around $55 per gram. Now, that's a very important number, and I'll run to that in a short while. But it's no accident and that this wonderful document, which you see outside the door here, is concentrated on the re-emergence of gold. Well, I would say we've already re-emerged. But there's a wonderful article here which I actually recommend if you haven't read it already. Go to page 70. It's Gavin Went's article, and he is probably the preeminent resource analyst in Australia. Some would dispute that, but I think that's probably correct. Okay, Talk Metals, where are we? What do we do? Oh, this just limits me to the things I can say to you. I can't ask you for money, for instance. I don't normally have the Chamber of Horrors up here, but I did notice that when Julian Babacci made his opening address, and it's quite correct, that one of the things that you really must look at is the management, not necessarily the photographs, but the length of experience. And this particular group, Mr. Shung Chang, who's actually Australian, he's not, as you might think, he's part Chinese, and he speaks Cantonese and Mandarin as well. So we're a multilingual board, and the two gentlemen, one above and one below him, speak fluent Lancastrian. But there's 120 years of experience there, that's the point. Where is the project? The project is Bullfinch. And Jerry, you've got 10 minutes to work on that wordplay. And where is Bullfinch? If you don't know, it's from West Australia. If you don't know the map, that's Australia. And Bullfinch is about 300 kilometres between Perth and Kalgoorlie. And it's a lovely little place, but nobody's been there for a long, long time, except the NBN. They've just put a new tower up. This is a critical map, and let me start with the story. How do we get to Bullfinch? Not by road, I mean, but why when you're putting an IPO together, do you finish up in Bullfinch? Well, I get a lot of people sort of phone me up and say, look, I've got this wonderful project. Can you put it in an IPO? We've done a number, so we know how to do it. This prospector phoned up and said, look, come and have a look at my prospect. I said, yeah, okay, it's on a prospecting license. Probably going to be a bit small for us. But, hey, let's go for a day out at Bullfinch. So we did, and he put on a wonderful lunch and so forth. But then I was quite surprised. He had a little mine called the Violet, and he had hand-dug 6,000 tonnes from underground of ore, and had shipped it off to the Coolgardie mill, and it returned 6.6 grams of gold from that 6,000 tonnes. So that made my, sort of eyes raise a little bit. He, of course, thought there should have been 10 grams there, and like all prospectors, he'd been duped. For me, when you go back to that $55 a gram that I spoke of, 6.6 grams is pretty good. So we had to wander around in the afternoon, and the amazing thing was there were more violets all over the place. And I couldn't work out why, when you look at this map, there's heaps and heaps of gold occurrences. That's all the little yellow dots there, all the way along that greenstone belt. The geology remains the same all the way up to Marda, right the way up here, which Remelius has just bought. But most of the gold is down south of the road. Now, there's only one mine in the Bullfinch area, so within 50 k's of the centre of the small town of Bullfinch, there's only one mine, and that is the Copperhead mine. And that's closed. It did mine over 1 million ounces of gold. The little one there has only produced 70,000 ounces, but it produced 70,000 ounces at 38 grams of gold. So this is the point. Wherever you wander, there are lots and lots of prospects. This is our ground here, by the way. We cover 615 square kilometres of ground at the moment, and it's all 100% owned by Torque. So, why would you have 15 million ounces of gold within 100 k's of the centre of Bullfinch and only 1 million ounces in the middle of it, within the 50 kilometres? And I think the answer is that in the early days, this is the Great Eastern Highway, it goes across from Perth to Sydney. I think this area was actually cleared, well, we know it was cleared, for agriculture. So the farmers moved in, and of course it wasn't really good agricultural country. It was very, very marginal at best. But the area to the south, while some of it was cleared, most of it wasn't and remained vacant Crown land. So all the prospectors went down south. The geology remains the same here, but it was farmland for many, many years. When the farmers, and this is what I postulate anyway, when the farmers got bored with losing money year after year after year, they went out and they became prospectors. So most of the prospectors out here, and there are many of them, are all ex-farmers. And they're all very nice people. But there's no gold mines. There's no gold mines of any significance, except over 200 small mines. I haven't counted them all, but I've certainly seen airborne shots of them. I've walked over many of them on the ground. And this is just a handful of some of the, shall we say, the more advanced ones. And what you find with these, and these are all on our ground. There's about 200 on our ground. One of the things we're going to have to do is log them all and get them onto some sort of database, because a lot of them are just been left unrecorded in the mines department. This is what it looks like on the ground. This is what you trip over when you're walking around. And the same thing. Withers, which we'll come back to in a moment, this has a recorded history. We can't put any of these numbers up here unless they have recorded history. Withers has a recorded history of extracting 30 grams per tonne. Over here, at Reynolds, again, high grade. This was a cocky who turned over some earth with a bulldozer where he thought there might be some grade, and indeed there was an average grade of something like 19 grams, I think. Similarly, although we don't own the radio mine, it's not on our ground, it is trying to get into production at the moment, but the historical production is, as I said, I think 38.5 grams. And it's very important, we'll come back to that in a second, because it's actually operating on the same sort of material, quartz veins with gold, over 130 metre strike length. Just remember those figures, we'll come back to that. And then there are other similar sort of story wherever you go. We have done some work. We've done over $200,000 worth of ground geochemistry, and obviously the first place you do your geochemistry is around the one and only Copperhead mine. So that's the outline of our tenement. We own everything to the east. Not surprisingly, we get anomalies around the Copperhead mine, but we also get real anomalies in the MMI style geochemistry, which we use to the south. And we've made sure that we're not talking here about a topographical or a false anomaly. We've done quite a bit of work on that. So they're walk-up targets. This is another example of walk-up targets. Harold Holt. This is an area we also, I told you this is where the cocky sort of turned over some gold with his tractor. We did an MMI survey over this, and there's a definite trend to it. And this is the trend put onto a map which was not produced by us. It was produced by Southern Geoscience. Good on them. But that trend goes right across their map. We didn't put that on. We put the geochemistry on afterwards, which actually just happens to fall directly on it. So there's another walk-up target. This is a great target because this has been looked at by a few people. It's called Withers, and this is our soil geochemistry over Withers. This is an area of about 4 square kilometres, which we did in very high detail, and it comes as no surprise that it's part of a trend which moves around in an arc from the Copperhead mine. Withers has had some, just go back here if I can, it has had production, I think somewhere in the region of 1,780 tonnes, and again, the average grade about 38 grams. This is a cartoon, really, of what we found in that geochemistry. Whilst everyone in the past had been focusing on the small pit, and this is where the 1,780 grams tonnes of 38 grams came from. Even Western Mining got involved in this, got excited at one point, but not for very long. These are actually outcropping. The red lines are actually outcropping quartz veins with hard gold in them. What we found from our survey is, of course, that they actually extend further, and not yet to be discovered, shall we say, and certainly to the south there's a real suggestion that we've got a stacked series of veins. In fact, this whole area here stands up in relief. It's a topographic high, which is what you'd expect if you've got a sort of silicic alteration. So this is a real target when we get started. That's a cartoon of a cross-section there, and in fact, all the work to date has been around that pit. This is what it looks like more after our work. So just to final say what we're about to do, we go back to that 55 grams. What are we going to do? Because the real question is, how can we evaluate these things? Because I've had quite a bit of experience in coarse grain gold. It's a nightmare. You can't drill it, and you can't get a quantitative answer to coarse grain gold with drills. You never know if you've missed it or it wasn't there in the first place. It's a real enigma. So the only real way you can do it is to bulk sample them. Now, as it happens, these things outcrop at surface. So we have the opportunity to bulk sample and get a real good idea, not only of the grade, but of the geology. So what happens then is you've got a whole lot of ore. Going back to my prospector, we could get 6,000 tonnes of ore from various prospects. Let's say we look at 6 of them, and we get 1,000 tonnes from each, whatever the government will allow us to take as a bulk sample. Which also means then we can truck it down the road to the mill. There's a mill owned by Minjar, the Chinese company Minjar, at Marvel Lock. It's a massive mill, totally underutilised, and we have been talking to them, and they're only too happy for us to put some ore through here. Now, this is not the main game. Don't let me get too excited. This is not the main game. This is simply self-supporting exploration for the first couple of years. We estimate we could probably get around about 4,000 or 5,000 ounces just out of the bulk sampling, and that would pay for most of our early exploration. And the major exploration then goes on to find Copperhead 2, Copperhead 3, etc., etc. So with those thoughts, please come and see us at the booth number 17. Be happy to talk to you and give you some more information if you would require it. Thank you very much.